To bring up a particular list of questions, simply click on the button that corresponds to the item you're interested in exploring first. For example, if we want to illustrate story points about our plot, we click on the Plot Story Encoding button, and that brings up the plot story encoding questions in this list. All you need to do is click on the little plus signs, which appear as arrows on Mac machines, and you can select any question like story goal, for example, and do your illustrations here. Clicking on the Explain Help View button will bring up an expanded version of the question, so we can get a more detailed description of what we're really being asked here. Clicking on the Theory button will tell us how the concept of a goal works in the overall drama, and clicking in Usage gives us some practical tips as well. Having gotten a little more information, we can now figure out what we want to say that will describe our goal. And in this particular case, let's just say the goal is that Joe wants to be president. Okay, we can go through all of the story points about our plot, or we can go back to the Home window just by selecting the Home list, and go to some other area of development, like Theme. If we stick in Story Encoding, we're going to be doing nothing but creating illustrations for the various story points that are important ultimately in our structure. For example, the objective story problem, the problem that is the source of all the difficulties in the overall story. We'll have something to say here as well. Once we've filled in all of the storytelling we can, then it's time to start figuring out what kind of a structure would support our storytelling. So let's return to the Home window again, and now let's select Plot Story Forming instead. Now remember, we're assuming we've done all of our storytelling first, and now we're going to figure out the structure. The first thing you want to do is go to the most important story point first, because when you're choosing a structural item, the first one's free. After that, every other choice is based on the conjunction of dramatics created by the choices you've already made. So eventually, some of the choices remaining to you may not at all reflect what you've done in your storytelling, and you want to make sure that's delayed down to the story points that are least important. So always begin with the most important story points when you're structuring, and then you'll get exactly what you want. Now as an example, when we click on Story Goal, now we're dealing with the information that we've already written, and we can get that by clicking on the Storytelling button. This will bring up in the structural window the words we wrote in storytelling, which are Joe wants to be president. Now our function is to go through this list of terms and determine which structural term best describes what we've written as our goal. So we can go through and say, well, he wants to be president. That's obtaining the office of the presidency. Or maybe it's more like the movie Dave, where he's given the office of presidency. He's impersonating the president, but he has to learn to become presidential. If we choose obtaining, it's about the race to achieve the office. If we choose becoming, it's about learning to be presidential. So the structural choices are making us work, making us think, helping us refine our story. And as an inspirationist writer, this is just what we need. Now, unlike the story guide, a nice thing about the Dramatica query system is you don't have to make one choice. For example, if we can't choose whether it's about obtaining the office of presidency or actually becoming presidential, we could select both. You just double-click or click once and hit Add, and when you do, both of those terms are added in as options. We've also, by default, ruled out a goal of understanding, doing, conceptualizing, being, and so on. So, the original 32,768 story form structures that were available to us has now been whittled down to 4,096 that would work with either a goal of obtaining or a goal of becoming.